want that. We don't want more. We don't want, we've got 8 strains floating around the world right now. We don't want any more. And so that's why we need to crush this thing as fast as possible. All right, now fun stuff. Unfortunately, my buddy Mike Null, who usually joins us, is not here, but he asked me last week about a couple of things that were in the news. So it was found that people with the BCG vaccine, I think I've got one. Yeah. So those of us who were inoculated to protect against tuberculosis with BCG, was a skin vaccination, have long-term studies have found that we have lower rates of respiratory infections, lower rates of illness, and it's not just because, and that has to do with those of us who got the BCG vaccination versus those of us who didn't. We had lower rates of respiratory infection and illness than those who did not. Weird. We don't know why. We have a theory, though. And we're also finding in France and Italy and Spain that those with BCG vaccinations are less susceptible to COVID. And we have a theory. The theory is called molecular mimicry. If you have ever seen a, what is it called? A stick insect, right? It looks like a stick, right? It's called mimicry and biological mimicry. It camouflages itself to look like a leaf, an insect that looks like a stick or a leaf. Well, that's to camouflage, protect itself, or create a diversion so that it can be better predator or whatever. We have at that, that's at the level of phenotype. At the level of molecular biology, we have molecular mimicry. One of the ways tuberculosis protects itself is with creating a huge, thick peptidoglycan wall around it, okay? It's so thick that even if you put it in a solution full of antibiotic, the antibiotic has trouble seeping through that outer wall to actually get inside the bacteria and do what it needs to do. That's why we have to use extremely high concentrations of any antibiotic to treat tuberculosis, and we have to use it for a long period of time. I'm talking 6-8 months, okay? So one of the things on the outside of the molecule of the bacteria is a mechanism to protect itself from the immune system. It molecularly looks like, let's try to go back to my analogy. So you got this wall. Instead of looking like a bacteria or giving indication of its true nature, it mimics other viruses and other proteins that other infectious agents use. So it kind of pretends to be something that it's not. The immune system comes and looks at tuberculosis and says, wait, this looks like a virus. It goes and tells B cells that it's a virus, but it's actually tuberculosis. So what's happening now with those of us who have the BCG vaccine is that early on when we got it, the ground up tuberculosis, attenuated, whatever, those bits and pieces, they look like so many different other infectious agents that our body has been trained to actually tackle the molecular mimicry. Okay, so that's one. Smoking. Terry, buddy, you know what I'm going to say, right? The cruddy lungs full of crap from smoking for decades. For some reason, you got lucky. It's a COVID protector. That's the biophysics of it. It's not the nicotine, or at least we don't know whether it's the nicotine, but it's probably not the nicotine. It's probably just the fact that there's so much debris in the lungs of long-term chronic smokers that it's hiding the receptors necessary for the virus to grab a hold. Okay, that's one. Number two is that the underreporting of smokers' disease is a result of also smokers being notoriously bad about going and seeing doctors because they don't like being told to stop smoking every time they go.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So there we go. That's another reason. We don't know. They probably get sick at home and recover, and they don't go through the full horrible course of the disease because the virus can't get at their get a grip on their lungs. So there's one thing that we learned. Llamas. So a couple of years ago, when they were doing research on MERS, and as well, they looked at camels as a vector for the virus, the host being an intermediary host. So they also used llamas to test, and for whatever inexplicable reason, they found that llamas are quickly able to develop neutralizing antibodies against SARS-CoV-2, so COVID-19. When it's given to llamas, they create these very high binding neutralizing antibodies. But is it protective? Is it? We don't. I'm not a veterinarian, so I'm not going to even say what's going on with that. All we know is that medically, it's a very interesting finding. We do not know whether or not we can extract the antibody, purify it, and use it as some sort of therapy in humans. Normally, to do something like that would take a very, very long time. And the reason you want to be very cautious about introducing any proteins that come from another animal into the human is because it can elicit a horrific anaphylactic reaction, or basically, create more problems than it could solve. Okay. Any possibility that pneumovax is a protective factor? No. Again, vaccines are very specific to the type of organism that they are protecting you from. So not likely. And again, the BCG vaccine is kind of one of those oddities that, because of the way tuberculosis looks or its morphology, that, and then molecular mimicry is what is conferring, kind of a little bit more resistance to other diseases once we have that. But pneumovax, we don't really know whether it would be useful, but vaccine theory would say that it wouldn't be very useful. Okay. Good question. I'm getting to that. Supplements later. All right. So protection. So what is quercetin, or whatever, how you pronounce it? All it is it's a purified form of a flavonoid, and a flavonoid is a molecule that's commonly found in fruits and vegetables. And I have a slide at the end of this deck that will go over that. But someone said that elderberry and other flavonoids are useful and protective in this disease, and in general in pulmonary infections. And so you saw it fly off the shelves along with zinc. You can't get zinc now. Just eat broccoli, for Christ's sake. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Flavonoids are everywhere. I have a whole list of them at the end of this slide deck that I'll show you. Melatonin is a well-known anti-inflammatory. It's a well-known immune modulator. It's a part of the natural circadian rhythm that your body secretes, at the end of the day, to bring your heart rate down, to bring your muscle tension down, and to help you relax and fall asleep. So do I recommend taking melatonin? No. Melatonin at night to help you sleep if you have anxiety? Yes. Do I recommend spending time looking for bottled quercetin? No. But do I recommend that you do take vitamin C and vitamin D and a multivitamin that has mineral supplementation such as zinc, manganese, magnesium? Yes, and I'll get to that on another slide. Absolutely. It does not harm you. Again, please know that there are two types of vitamins. One is water soluble, one is fat soluble. Or one class is water soluble and one is fat. You can take huge amounts of the water soluble. Your body will look at it and say, okay, I'm going to use what I've got. I don't need this. And then it goes out in your urine. If you try to do that with the fat soluble ones, the body says, how much do I have? I'm going to store it in my liver. I'm going to store it in fat cells, and I'm going to store it in case I need it later. But if you go overboard with it, you can overload your liver and it can become toxic. In the case of vitamin A, vitamin E, those are you have to be very cautious with overdosing on those. It takes a while and it's a lot. You have to take a lot, but please just don't. Okay, take the normal USDA recommended dose. Over-the-counter vitamin supplementation is fine. Just don't overdo it. Okay, next.